Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Nate's DIY Gardening. Today we're going to be talking about wind in your garden. Before we get started, please hit that thumbs up on my YouTube video. Please hit the subscribe button. The more you do that, the more you subscribe, the more you hit the thumbs up. You'll get better results on my algorithm, search algorithm in YouTube. Also, I have my Instagram page, Nate's DIY Gardening, and I also have my webpage, natesdiygardening.com. Let's get started. So today we're going to talk about wind. The reason I'm talking about wind today is because I'm here in the Kansas City metro area, and for the last 4 or 5 months we have been dealing with a lot of wind here in Kansas City, a lot more than usual. So how does wind affect your garden and your vegetables? For one thing, wind can be a good thing. So when your plants first start sprouting, they need that little resistance from the wind so their base and their stalk can be a lot thicker, so they'll be sturdy when they start to grow and get a lot bigger. So if you notice, if you try to grow plants inside, they'll grow tall, but they'll grow skinny. And eventually they'll fall over because they don't have that wind resistance to make that base a lot stronger. So in some cases, you do want some wind, 5 to 10 miles per hour, to kind of get your plants strong so they can be sturdy. But when it gets too windy, then wind can damage your plants. So one of the issues I had a few years back when I lived further out in the country, we had a lot of wind come through one night, and I lost maybe half of my bell pepper plants because out in the country, you don't have a lot more houses closer together. You're actually more spread out, so way more open field. So when that wind came through, I lost half of my pepper plants, actually snapped in half. So what you need to do when you talk about wind is you need to stake your plants. Now some plants need staking and some plants don't need staking. All right, so for a lot of your spring and fall plants, a lot of them don't need staking. So when you're talking about your collards and your broccoli, cabbages, spinach, lettuce, stuff like that, arugula, they really don't need to be staked. They grow fairly resistant to wind and they kind of grow close to the ground. But with a lot of your summer plants, you need to stake them. So we're talking about bell peppers, we're talking about your eggplants, we're talking about all your tomato plants. These are the type of plants that you will need to stake in your garden so that if wind does come through, they won't get snapped or broken or knocked over or fall over. So I got 2 examples here of stakes that I use in my garden. So when I put my stake in the ground, it's about 4 or 5, about 6 inches to a foot in the ground. So what I do is once it's in there, then I plant my plant right next to it. So in this case, a bell pepper plant. And as it grows, I tied the main stem to the stake. And you want to use something like an old t-shirt that you can cut up or something very soft around the base. So when the wind does blow, it doesn't cut into the stalk of the base. So old t-shirt, there's some rubber type stuff you can put, you can tie around your plant. And that gives a little, if you use like a wire or something like that and the wind comes through, that wire will cut into the stem of your plant. So you don't want to use wire, old t-shirt, just cut it up in little small strands and just tie it up to there. So I use this for my bell peppers and I use this for my eggplants. For my tomato plants, I had something a little bigger. I have an 8-foot stake. So like I said, you put it in the ground. This one probably get about 6 inches into the ground. And once I get it in the ground, I plant my tomato plants at the bottom, and then as the main stem grows, I tie my tomato plants to this. Your tomato plants, I need a bigger stake or a thicker stake than my regular 4 or 5 foot stake I use for my bell peppers, because my tomato plants the tomatoes are very heavy. So I use a stake and I use a tomato cage for my tomato plants. But you will need a stake, something like this, for tomato plants, because my tomato plants get about 6 feet tall, 7 feet tall, depending on how I let it grow over the cage or I continue to tie it to the stem. But you need stakes for your garden. And as a rule, I would just say go ahead and stake your plants, even when you don't think you're in a windy place, because you never know when a thunderstorm may roll through and you may lose some plants because they weren't staked properly. So again, this is for my tomato plants, my 8-foot stakes. And then for my bell peppers and eggplants, I have my 4 or 5 foot stake. And that's what I use to stake. So again, wind can be very dangerous in your garden. So you need to prepare for it. Like I said, you need some wind so that your stalk of your plants can get bigger. So like your broccoli, your collards, like stuff, the stalk gets thicker because of that little wind resistance. But we get constantly getting a lot of wind, 30, 40 mile per hour winds, you do need a stake. So in Kansas City, we've been having a lot of wind since the beginning of January, running 30, 40 mile per hour pretty consistently. So again, wind, stake, make sure you stake your plants. So this is it for our episode. Again, hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and again, check out my Instagram page, Nate's DIY Gardening, and then check out my webpage, natesdiygarden.com. Until next time, see you later.